Imagine you wake up one morning, you grab your phone, and a huge chunk of the internet has just disappeared. Well, for a few hours, back on November 18th, 2025, that wasn't some hypothetical scenario. It was very, very real. It felt like a digital apocalypse, and today, we're going to break down exactly what happened during that massive CloudFlare outage.
And honestly, in a way, it kind of did. If you were online that morning, you absolutely felt it. Services you use every single day, we're talking everything from your social media apps to the tools you need for work, they all just started throwing errors or went dark. It wasn't your Wi-Fi. A fundamental piece of the web had literally broken. So what on earth was going on?
I mean, the sheer scope of this was just staggering. We're talking about massive household names like ChatGPT and X, creative platforms like Canva, and huge parts of the online gaming world. This wasn't just a few random websites acting up. It was like a major highway of the internet had been shut down completely out of the blue.
And this number right here, this is why it felt so huge. According to W3 Techs, more than a fifth of all websites on the planet rely on CloudFlare for stuff like security and performance. So when CloudFlare stumbles, a massive part of the internet goes down right along with it.
You know, in those first few chaotic hours, nobody had a clue what was happening. And in the world we live in today, when a critical piece of infrastructure fails without any explanation, pretty much everyone's mind jumps to the exact same conclusion. This has to be a cyber attack.
Just look at this timeline. It shows how incredibly fast things went off the rails. From the very first sign of trouble to a full-blown incident being declared, that took just 15 minutes. Inside CloudFlare, engineers were apparently thinking it was a massive DDoS attack, especially because the system kept failing, then recovering, then failing all over again. That on-again, off-again behavior just fueled the confusion and the growing fear that this was some kind of coordinated assault.
But here's the thing. The culprit wasn't some shadowy hacker group. The truth was actually something way more mundane and, in a way, way more fascinating. The internet wasn't under attack. It was brought to its knees by a classic Cascade failure, a tiny internal mistake that set off an absolutely catastrophic chain reaction.
Okay, so check this out. It all started with a single, totally routine permissions change. A tiny update. But that one simple change had a completely unforeseen side effect. An automated process started pulling duplicate data. This made a critical configuration file suddenly double in size, blowing past a hard-coded limit. And when the main software tried to load this giant file, it crashed. A tiny, well-meaning change triggered a total system meltdown.
So the software that failed is written in a programming language called Rust. And Rust has this built-in safety feature. When it runs into an impossible situation, like trying to load this oversized file, it's designed to panic, basically to shut itself down completely. Now, this is a good thing because it prevents data corruption or weird, unpredictable behavior. So, ironically, the system chose to fail safely instead of running incorrectly, and that very safety feature is what took services offline for millions of people. And get this, to make things even crazier, CloudFlare was right in the middle of switching to a new version of its software. The old version didn't crash, but it failed in its own special way by basically telling customers that no traffic was a bot. The new version, though, that's the one that hit the Rust panic and went down completely. So depending on which system your website's traffic was hitting, you saw a totally different kind of failure. What a mess. All right, so the outage itself was a huge deal. But what happened in the hours after the outage was, in its own way, just as remarkable as the failure itself.
Less than 12 hours. Let that sink in for a second. In less than 12 hours after the whole thing started, CloudFlare published this incredibly detailed, super technical, and just brutally honest report explaining every single step of what went wrong, right down to the specific line of code.
And this comment from a user on Hacker News just nails why CloudFlare's response was so extraordinary. The typical corporate postmortem is this sanitized, vague document that gets watered down by marketing and legal for weeks. CloudFlare just told everyone what happened, and for that they got a ton of praise across the tech world for their speed and transparency.
But all that praise from engineers didn't stop the immediate financial hit. As the outage was happening, CloudFlare stock, ticker NET, dropped by over 4%. It just goes to show you how sensitive the market is to the reliability of these core internet companies.
But there's another twist to this story. The outage also had this totally surprising and, for a lot of companies, pretty terrifying side effect. It basically became a free, unplanned security stress test that revealed just how vulnerable some of them really were.
Yeah, this quote from Nicole Scott just says it all. See, during the outage, some companies were desperate to get back online, so they scrambled and bypassed Cloudflare's protection, pointing their web traffic directly to their own servers. And by doing that, they basically opened the floodgates.
For a few hours, that digital shield that normally blocks all the bots, hackers, and denial-of-service attacks, it was just gone. This meant their own internal firewalls were suddenly staring down the full, raw, chaotic force of the open internet. It was a live fire exercise they never signed up for, and it instantly showed how well or, how poorly their own defenses could actually hold up.
So this whole event became a massive wake-up call. Security teams suddenly had a brand new to-do list. They had to comb through all their logs, looking for any threats that might have snuck past their now exposed defenses. But the biggest takeaway was way more strategic. It forced a really hard look at the risks of putting all your security eggs in one single provider's basket.
And really, when you step back, this one outage forces us to zoom all the way out and ask a much bigger question, a question that gets to the very heart of how the modern internet is actually built.
This comment from a user on Hacker News really sums up this growing anxiety a lot of people feel. The internet was designed, from the very beginning, to be this resilient, decentralized network with no single point of failure. But today, a gigantic portion of it leans on a handful of massive companies like Cloudflare and Amazon Web Services. And when one of them has a bad day, the entire web feels it.
And that leaves us with this huge, critical question. These massive platforms give us incredible stability and security, for sure. But by concentrating so much of the internet's core functions into just a few single points of failure, are we accidentally building a much more fragile system? The Cloudflare outage didn't give us an easy answer, but it was a powerful and maybe a little scary reminder that the foundations of our digital world might not be as solid as we like to think. Thanks for watching.